HTTP2 is the new hotness. It's going to be what you should be serving stuff over the wire as. It started off as a Chrome-only technology, SPDY. They had several iterations of it, and they opened up the technology. Eventually, browsers like Firefox and Opera implemented it, and there were enough implementations and implementers that they worked out all the kinks, and here we go. We have a technology that, as far as regular users are concerned, will not notice it unless you go into your developer tools and open up the tab, the network tab, and start looking around. Look at that. Oh. I'm serving HTTP2. So you put in google.com in a suitably modern browser like Chrome, Firefox, and open up the network tab. It's going to show it's in HTTP2 mode. So why HTTP? Why upgrade HTTP? Well, aside from the protocol being made over about 30 years ago, with a lot of those design assumptions in mind, well, what's that mean? As part of every web request, you're going to make a part that you do not see. There's a header information that transmits things like your cookies. And nowadays, there's a lot more stuff being stuffed into the header, like OAuth keys and so on. So this brings about compression of all that material. So before you were sending all your cookie in unencrypted, and depending on if it's secure or not, plain text or encrypted. So this squeezes that part down. The other feature is pipelining. It's going to keep one big fire hose open instead of having a bunch of single one-off connections. 68 connections, 8 or 16 at a time, and download them all sequentially. Pipelining means it's going to open one big connection, and it's going to shove everything in there like on an assembly line. It's still going to have everything be in pieces, because that's what internet protocols do. It's going to say, we have a JPEG here of a cat. I'm going to split it up into 63 pieces, and I'm going to give you 1 out of 63, 3 out of 63, 13 out of 63, then go back to 2 out of 63. And your internet protocol handler on your computer is smart enough to know, all right, I'm going to stitch these all back together, and if it's missing a piece, there's kind of a round trip where it said, yeah, hey, I just got 3 out of 63, we're cool. The server will know, oh, I didn't get a response back for 7 out of 63, or and vice versa. So it's all going to be in one big piece. It's all going to be in one big stream, one big lazy Susan with different pieces going around. So you're going to avoid all the handshaking with every connection you make. So you're not making 63 different file transfers, each saying, hey, I'd like to get this thing, can you give it to me please? Here we go. It's all one big river, gushing river. Another feature of HTTP2 is mandatory HTTPS. It is not mandated in the standard that's registered with the elders of the internet. It is, this is something that the browser makers all got together and said, you know, we really like secure content to the point where any new web protocol will not work without HTTPS. So you've got other technologies like the streaming RTSP, RTMP. That's the older one. That's the Flash one. It'll come back to me later. But it allows there's a peer-to-peer streaming content protocol where you can contact someone directly with your browser instead of going to a central server. So that also requires HTTP2. Do you have to do anything special for HTTP2 aside from securing an SSL certificate? No, in fact, and the other good thing about this is all the crazy build processing you have to do for files to concatenate and minify. You don't have to go through all that great lengths. You should minify your files, but smushing everything all in one big JavaScript file, one big CSS file, that's no longer necessary. The pipelining process means you're avoiding the penalty for splitting every file up. So that's a good thing. And here is a demo. So what you just saw is the globe on the left is the old badness, and the one on the right was the new hotness. So let's preview that again. Oh. You can see that the HTTP 1 version went along sequentially, filled everything in. HTTP 2, it filled in bits and pieces here and there as the blocks all filled in. So you are not bound by the dependence on sequential loads. So you don't have to wait for part A to move on to part B. You can load them all in as they're going. So this is an extreme example that they made for the purpose of testing, but this shows you how quick and how efficient. Oh, actually the HTTP 1 version loaded in a little more quickly.
Let's assume it was
Yeah.
Yes,
the
caching.
first one didn't. It did reload a couple times.
So how many of you have image sprited?
Oh, I know.
How many of you know what image spriting is? For those who don't, it's taking a bunch of images that are referenced in your CSS, putting them all in one big file, and using background positioning to move that part of the image sprite into place. That is going to be a lost art once HTTP 2 is in place, and
yeah.
I'm not going to miss it. I won't cry over its demise. Memes.
Unboxing videos.
Yes.
This information is a little bit out of date. Google has since updated Chrome to look for a different technology related to OpenSSL. OpenSSL is using a lot of web services, web technologies, and it's considered to be a part of the operating system. So if your service, if your host is on a version of, most are using like a Debian or Ubuntu derivative. If they're using something based on Trusty Tar 1404, that codes out to the release that came out in 2014, April, that's old and bad and not going to support what Chrome expects for HTTP 2. It's going to require the version of OpenSSL present in Ubuntu 16.04, the one that just came out this last April. So if your host has not expressed plans to migrate, to upgrade their base operating system to a current Ubuntu, give them the boot. Well, I know migrating servers is a big deal, but express extreme dissatisfaction at their pace of improvement. And for readiness, here's a test site. I haven't checked it out today. Let's see how it is. And I'm going to use my my static host. One casualty is having to split up your assets over different hosts. So I will eventually shut down my static davidthemachine.org. Let's get this whole URL. Yeah. Yes.
Share that beautifully.
And it supports this the fancy schmancy buzzword associated with making sure that your OS is up to date is this ALPN. So if this says ALPN is not supported, that means your OpenSSL version is out of date, and that's tied to the operating system. So say, ask for a current operating system on your host. And my focus was in the address bar. Oh, that's a weird feature I've never discovered. If you hit escape.
I was going to say, you have to remember that key combination.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hitting escape unfolds it.
Oh.
Now how do you get it? Well, I already covered that. And that's it. That was the last slide.
Cool.
Any questions?
Could you go to the previous slide?
Yeah.
Can you publish these slides again in the Meetup?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I'm in an anonymous window and I'm not logged in.
Okay.
I won't log in. I won't log in while you're watching.
Come on.
I was hoping to hack Dave the Machine.
You really want that domain, don't you?
It could work.
This is a new laptop. I haven't fully settled into it. I'm trying to keep personal stuff off. Oh, here's the checklist that Linda linked. What do we have?
Lots of stuff.
Anything arduous? Start with a test server, so you have your local like desktop server. Greg, does desktop server have all the buzzwordy stuff? Does it have? I think OpenSSL 1.0.2.
I'm not sure.
Does it
the
rely
version
on the
number.
base operating system's OpenSSL?
It does. There is something with the SSL cert that we're using.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah. we'll have to check.
Another thing that about to share to you. There's the task of getting an SSL certificate. It costs money. It used to cost money. Now there are free services. Let's Encrypt, you heard about tonight, isn't the service that gives you an SSL certificate. It's not the organization. It uses a protocol that a bunch of SSL providers decided to get together and make, and they hook into there. So we have something like Start SSL, which uses that behind the scenes. So you can come over here and give yourself a free tier SSL certificate. One caveat with Start SSL, back when Heartbleed was around, people using Start SSL's free certificate found out that they had to pay to revoke and get a new certificate while the certificate was still in term. So that's a caveat here. If you have the technical chops to install Let's Encrypt, do so. If your host lets you hook into it, that's a good thing.
Only lasts for 90 days.
Yeah.
So
You can script around it. You can make a cron job that will little handshake there. One thing that kind of annoys me about Let's Encrypt is it's a huge thing. It has tendrils everywhere creeping along. It has to have root access. It has to be able to restart your web server. So out of the box, Nginx will not work with Let's Encrypt. So you have to either compile a custom Nginx yourself or switch to Apache and install the Apache module that works with Let's Encrypt. So that's a caveat there. It is very involved. There's a lighter weight project with Acme in its name.
Yeah.
And it's a script that you install on your own and customize for your own purposes.
So whatever negatives he's talking about, I'm getting that.
I would assume so. I mean, SiteGround made an announcement that they're using Let's Encrypt in order to accomplish that, because we recommend people use SSL Forgive.
But they're using
But
Apache.
they don't want you to use, so Matt is
So
always
you're
telling
okay.
people not to use it because it doesn't have the EV certificate. And donations or e-commerce.
That's the reason. That's the reason why there's been quite a bit of a delay from some of the hosts that use Nginx for, and how people like us are wanting like premium web hosting, but we don't want to pay for SSL certificates. So you know what I mean? It was like, okay, WP Engine, why don't you guys have, Let's Encrypt on there kind of thing. So it's like, I wonder how this is going to work out. So there's a lot of those premiums that are like, we really want you to do this, but we don't want to pay for SSL.
But you just said SiteGround's okay because it's Apache?
Yeah. But they have it all built into their control panel, so you don't have to do anything special.
Yeah, it's been months since I looked at this. There was one of these Acme interface things written in Python was the one you take and you're supposed to fork it and modify to your own use case. But as you can see here, there are many more other options. Let's Encrypt is using the Acme protocol, so if you can hook into that directly, do so. Otherwise, you've got Let's Encrypt, which has its issues. It's good, but it's not so good in places.
And SiteGround has auto renewal for theirs, so every 90 days it just auto renewals.
So all of the scripty stuff we've talked about is like all just baked into that cPanel setup. It's in there.
Let's see. Since mixed content errors are a big deal, check with your CDN. So some CDNs are still not on the HTTP2 bandwagon. As you can see here with Akamai, they are. Not that I have any affiliation with Akamai or any the marketing. What's that?
Affiliate link?
Yeah, I don't share an affiliate link relationship with
Pay for
Akamai.
saying that?
They pay them double for saying that.
7, 8, 9, there. That's content CMS. Check the quality of your CMS. 11, crawl the site. I know how to do it with script, but I don't know of any services. Maybe Google. Does Google Webmaster Tools have something like a site health check spider?
Does it Moz?
Not a
Yeah,
spider.
Webmaster Tools has a spider, I think. Call spider, I believe.
Yeah, 12 is kind of a content issue. 13, 13 is something you can either do with your HT access or your Nginx config. HT access you can change if you have upload access to your server. Nginx you have to have admin level access. So if your site is hosted with Nginx, you got to open up a ticket with your tech support there to put in that redirect. There are plugins that do HTTPS upgrades, so they can be used in place. I don't know about the quality of any of them, so you'll have to go around the repo and see what's there. But that's possible without having to go to tech support with your host and put in a ticket. Sitemaps and robots, that can be done with Yoast. Last time I looked into Yoast for robots, it was hidden under a bunch of menus, but I think it's there. HSTS, that is a super secure mode you can activate. That can be done with a plugin or with server config or HT access. So check what your host is running, whether it's Apache. With Apache, you can do the HT access thing. With Nginx, either a ticket or a plugin. Oh, yes. Here we go. It's been updated 4 months ago. It's got
Only 30 active installs.
yeah.
The author has 45 plugins, so you might know where you start.
Or he might be spamming the system. Or he might have 45 bad plugins.
Oh my god.
Or she-
OCSP stabling. I think that's the fancy way to talk about certificate pinning. That term rings a bell, but can't tell you what it is off the top of my head. I think it has to do with certificate pinning, where you can say this certificate belongs to this IP address, and if any of them change, alarms.
It's saying something about downloading and cross-checking with the certificate authority.
Yeah, it's a way to further anchor your identity with a particular certificate provider and your host. Again, with with an SSL certificate, you're not paying for the encryption. You're paying for the chain of trust. Have you ever done this? This site is not secure.
That's ironic. Oh yeah.
You can click on the lock icon and check the details of a certificate. So here this says it's a secure certificate. It's verified by Let's Encrypt. And further detail. Can I make this bigger? That's as big as it can go. You can sniff even further and see all sorts of stuff that don't immediately make sense, like what's serial number, that's a bunch of hexadecimal, but you can see who it's issued by. And if it's part of a chain, like you have SSL resellers who buy a certificate that lets them sign other certificates, so you can go up the chain and see who's doing what. There are some SSL certificate vendors that are not trustworthy, or they have been, there is evidence to believe that they have been compromised by the bad people.
You can name names.
Like Korea, Russia.
Well, you know which certificate vendors.
Komodo? Yeah, let's ask the Googles. Yeah.
Google are the bad people.
I don't remember off the top of my head. There was a big brouhaha on Hackers News about how one vendor, there's evidence to show that one vendor has been compromised. Or like even one of the former Soviet republics leaked out its signing key.
Mm.
Or even Dell. Dell did a thing where they have something that runs in your BIOS, so you don't even have to boot up into Windows. It's in your BIOS, and it checks out to the internet, and it had the public and private key in the BIOS.
Nice.
So you had something saying, I'm Dell, you can trust me. And you can make other things that say, I'm Dell, you can trust me. Disavow file. I'm not familiar with that. Is that like a blocking file?
I don't know.
Is that an SEO thing?
Well, maybe I need to update it. I don't know what it is.
And it doesn't get invited to Christmas. The social
It's
share
disallowed.
counts is interesting because all of your share counts are to the HTTP. So I do see that on Warfare social plugin, they have a special thing for that you can run to make sure that it goes to the HTTPS. But
Yeah,
that could be an issue with social.
So is it possible to merge URLs? It's been a long time since I implemented a social accounting thing from scratch. But I know as far as the URL goes, adding that extra S makes it a completely different page in the eyes of search engines and so on. Unless you do something fancy with your redirects.
Yeah.
You can do there are two types of redirects you can do. There's one that's temporary and one that's permanent. So 301 is the permanent one. And 302 you can have something in place where if you're taking your site down for an hour to scrub out the database, search engines will know, okay, I won't trust this, I'll come back later. Any other questions? Right.